It was a sunny afternoon, and the Johnson family was on their way home after a fun day out. They decided to make a quick stop at a local store for some snacks before heading back. The store, known for its quaint setup and variety of products, seemed like a harmless place. Just another small business serving the neighborhood. But what was supposed to be a simple stop turned into a moment they would never forget. As they entered, Mr. Johnson smiled politely at the store owner, a middle-aged man with a stern expression. Mrs. Johnson led their two young children toward the candy aisle while her husband browsed nearby. Everything seemed normal until the store owner's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Hey, you people better not touch anything unless you're buying it," he snapped, glaring at them. Confused and caught off guard, Mr. Johnson approached the counter. "Excuse me? Is there a problem?" he asked calmly. The owner crossed his arms defiantly. "Just making sure you folks don't mess up my store." The Johnsons were shocked. It was clear they were being treated differently solely because of their skin color. Mrs. Johnson, holding her children's hands tightly, felt anger rising in her chest. She had experienced subtle racism before, but this was blatant and humiliating. As other customers in the store looked on awkwardly, some avoiding eye contact altogether, the weight of the situation became unbearable. Mr. Johnson took a deep breath, determined not to let his children witness him lose composure. "We'll be leaving now," he said firmly, turning toward the exit. But as they walked out, Mrs. Johnson pulled out her phone. "This can't go unanswered," she whispered to her husband. What happened next would spark a conversation far beyond the walls of that small store. Discrimination like this often goes unnoticed or unaddressed, but the Johnsons were not about to stay silent. They knew that exposing this incident could shine a light on a problem that countless others face every day. And so, with trembling hands, Mrs. Johnson uploaded a video she had managed to record during the confrontation, along with a caption. "This is 2025, and this is still happening. Share this. Enough is enough." Within hours, the post went viral. The video captured the raw emotion of the encounter, the owner's dismissive tone, the shocked expressions of the Johnson family, and the palpable tension in the room. Comments flooded in, ranging from messages of support to stories from others who had faced similar experiences. As the story gained traction, the store's online reviews were bombarded with negative feedback, and calls for accountability grew louder. People demanded an apology, some even suggesting a boycott. The Johnsons were overwhelmed by the attention, but knew they had done the right thing. This was about more than just one family or one store. It was about challenging everyday racism and holding people accountable for their actions. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reveal just how powerful a community united by justice could be. The Johnsons' decision to share their experience online was a courageous act born out of frustration and a desire for justice. However, they were unprepared for the overwhelming response that followed. Within hours of the video being posted, social media was ablaze with discussions. The hashtags #StandWithTheJohnsons and #BoycottRacistStore trended nationwide. People from all walks of life weighed in, expressing shock, anger, and solidarity. Many shared their own experiences of facing discrimination, creating a powerful wave of testimony that highlighted a persistent issue. Racism wasn't just a problem of the past. It still thrived in everyday spaces. While some comments were supportive, there were others who questioned the validity of the Johnsons' claims. "Maybe they misunderstood," one person wrote. "The owner was just being cautious. Nothing to do with race." This narrative was quickly dismantled by others who pointed out the blatant tone and choice of words used by the store owner in the video. "It's obvious he's profiling them," one commenter said. "Would he have said that to a white family?" Journalists picked up the story, eager to uncover more about the incident. News outlets ran headlines such as "Small Store Owner Accused of Racism After Viral Video," and "Family's Courage Sparks Nationwide Discussion on Everyday Racism." A local activist group, dedicated to combating racial discrimination, reached out to the Johnsons, offering support and guidance. They helped the family file a formal complaint against the store with the local business bureau. "This isn't just about one store," the group's leader, Angela Rivera, told the media. "It's about sending a message that racism has no place in our communities." Meanwhile, The store owner, Mr. Harold Baker, remained defiant. When reporters approached him for a statement, he dismissed the accusations. "This is all blown out of proportion," he insisted. "I treat everyone the same. People are too sensitive these days." His refusal to acknowledge his wrongdoing only fueled the fire. Social media detectives dug into his past, unearthing troubling patterns. Former employees came forward, alleging that Baker had a history of discriminatory behavior. One former cashier recounted how he was told to keep an eye on certain customers based solely on their appearance. As the backlash intensified, some members of the community rallied behind Baker, claiming he was being unfairly targeted. "I've known Harold for years," one customer said during a local news interview. "He's a good man. This cancel culture stuff is getting out of hand." The division was palpable, but the Johnsons stood firm. "This isn't about ruining someone's life," Mr. Johnson explained in an interview. "It's about making sure no one else has to go through what we did. We just want accountability and change." Their courage resonated with many, sparking debates not just about racism, but also about the power and consequences of social media exposure. Was it right to publicly shame someone? Did the store owner deserve a second chance? Or was this a necessary step toward justice? The conflict deepened as community members organized a peaceful protest outside the store. Signs reading "Justice for the Johnsons" and "Racism Stops Here" filled the street. The protest drew attention from local officials, who promised to look into the allegations against the store. Despite the growing support, the Johnsons faced their share of challenges. Harassment messages flooded their inboxes, accusing them of seeking fame or trying to ruin a small business. But the family remained undeterred. "This isn't just about us," Mrs. Johnson said through tears during a heartfelt interview. "It's about every Black family that gets treated like they don't belong. We belong, and we're not going to be silent anymore." As the tension reached a boiling point, the Johnsons knew that their story had become part of something much larger. The battle lines were drawn, and the stage was set for a dramatic turning point. Would the community stand for justice, or would old prejudices prevail? As the Johnson story continued to gain traction, a group of investigative journalists took interest in digging deeper into the incident and the store owner's history. What began as a single family's experience had now transformed into a full-blown investigation into patterns of discriminatory practices in the local business community. The first step was reaching out to former employees of the store. Some were hesitant to speak publicly, fearing retaliation, but others, emboldened by the Johnsons' bravery, came forward with damning testimonies. There was always an unspoken rule about certain customers, one ex-employee revealed. "We were told to watch Black families more closely." Harold claimed it was just good business, but it was obvious what he really meant. Another former cashier recalled an incident where Baker had refused service to a young Black man simply because he looked suspicious. "The guy was just buying milk and bread," she said. "But Harold told him to leave. I quit shortly after that because I couldn't stand working in that environment anymore." The journalist also spoke to longtime customers who had mixed reactions. Some defended Baker, insisting he was old-fashioned but not racist. Others, however, shared similar stories of feeling unwelcome or scrutinized. "I stopped going there years ago," one local resident admitted. "I always felt like I was being watched the second I walked in." It's not surprising to hear what happened to the Johnsons. The investigation didn't stop at interviews. Public records revealed that Baker had faced previous complaints for discriminatory practices, though none had resulted in formal action. These revelations added fuel to the fire, strengthening the public's call for accountability. Meanwhile, social media continued to play a crucial role in the unfolding story. Amateur sleuths scoured the internet for any trace of Baker's past, uncovering offensive posts he had made on a now-defunct forum years earlier. Screenshots of these posts circulated online, further damaging his reputation. As the evidence piled up, community leaders and activists demanded a formal investigation by local authorities. The mayor held a press conference, acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations. "Discrimination has no place in our city," she declared. "We will thoroughly investigate this matter and take appropriate action." Despite the mounting pressure, Baker remained defiant. In an exclusive interview with a local news station, He doubled down on his claims of innocence. "I've never treated anyone unfairly," he insisted. "This whole thing is a witch hunt. People just want to see me fail." His words did little to sway public opinion. The video of his confrontation with the Johnsons had already painted a clear picture, and the additional evidence only reinforced the narrative of a man unwilling to take responsibility for his actions. Behind the scenes, the Johnsons were working closely with legal advisors and community activists to ensure that their case would bring about meaningful change. They weren't interested in merely punishing Baker. They wanted to spark a broader conversation about racial bias in businesses. One evening, Mrs. Johnson received a message from a stranger. It was a black mother who had seen the viral video. "Thank you for speaking up," the message read. "I went through something similar, but I didn't have the courage to say anything. You're making a difference." The message brought Mrs. Johnson to tears. Despite the harassment and challenges they faced, moments like this reminded the family why they had chosen to share their story in the first place. As the investigation progressed, new developments emerged. The store's sales plummeted as more people chose to boycott it. Several suppliers cut ties with Baker, unwilling to be associated with the controversy. The financial strain began to take its toll, but Baker still refused to apologize or acknowledge any wrongdoing. The turning point came when a group of community leaders organized a town hall meeting to address the issue. The Johnsons were invited to speak, along with other residents who had experienced discrimination. The event was packed with people eager to share their stories and hear from the family who had ignited this important conversation. Standing before the crowd, Mr. Johnson took a deep breath. "We didn't ask for any of this," he began. "We just wanted to buy snacks for our kids. But when someone tries to make you feel like you don't belong, you have a choice. You can walk away and stay silent, or you can stand up and say, 'This is not okay.' We chose to stand up." The audience erupted into applause. One by one, other speakers shared their own experiences, creating a powerful tapestry of voices demanding change. By the end of the night, it was clear that the community was united in its call for accountability and progress. The investigation had not only exposed Baker's discriminatory practices, but had also sparked a movement for inclusivity and respect. The Johnsons had started this journey hoping for justice, but what they had uncovered was something far greater: a collective determination to challenge prejudice and build a stronger, more inclusive community. The town hall meeting marked a turning point in the unfolding story. The Johnsons had ignited a movement, and now it was time to turn outrage into meaningful change. Community leaders, activists, and local residents rallied together, determined to ensure that discrimination would no longer be tolerated in their town. One of the first concrete steps was the formation of a task force aimed at addressing racial bias in local businesses. Comprising city officials, business owners, and community representatives, the task force set out to create a set of guidelines promoting inclusivity and respect. Mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for store owners and employees became one of the primary recommendations. The Johnsons were invited to share their insights during the task force's first meeting. "We're not here to tear anyone down," Mr. Johnson said passionately. "We just want to make sure no one else has to go through what we did. Respect and fairness should be the standard, not the exception." Meanwhile, legal proceedings against Harold Baker were underway. The local business bureau launched an investigation into his discriminatory practices, and the evidence gathered by journalists and former employees painted a damning picture. Faced with mounting legal and financial pressure, Baker finally issued a public statement. "I want to apologize to the Johnson family and the community," he said during a press conference. "I realize now that my actions were hurtful and unacceptable. I am committed to learning from this experience and making changes to how I run my business." The apology was met with mixed reactions. Some believed it was a genuine step toward redemption, while others saw it as a calculated move to save his reputation and business. Nevertheless, it was a significant moment, one that underscored the power of accountability. In a surprising move, Baker announced that he would be temporarily closing his store to undergo a complete rebranding and retraining of his staff, including himself. "I need to be better," he admitted, "and I want my store to reflect the values of respect and inclusivity." The community watched closely as the store underwent its transformation. The once dated signage was replaced with a vibrant new logo that emphasized community unity. Baker hired a diverse staff and implemented new policies to ensure that every customer felt welcome. The Johnsons, too, underwent a transformation of their own. What had started as a traumatic experience had become a journey of empowerment and growth. They found strength in their ability to spark change and became advocates for social justice within their community. The media continued to follow their story, showcasing the positive impact their courage had made. Schools invited them to speak about standing up against discrimination, and local organizations sought their advice on promoting inclusivity. Their children, who had witnessed the incident firsthand, learned valuable lessons about resilience and the importance of speaking out. "We're proud of our parents," their oldest child said during a school presentation. "They taught us to stand up for what's right." The ripple effect of the Johnsons' actions extended far beyond their town. Other communities took note, implementing similar initiatives to combat discrimination. Social media, which had initially been a battleground, became a platform for sharing stories of hope and progress. One particularly heartwarming moment came when Mrs. Johnson received a message from Harold Baker himself. "I know I have a long way to go," he wrote, "but I want to thank you for pushing me to see the truth. I'm trying to be better for my family, my business, and my community." While some might have dismissed his words as mere damage control, Mrs. Johnson chose to see them as a sign of genuine growth. "People can change," she said during an interview. "It's not easy, but it's possible. And when they do, we all win." As the town continued to heal, the Johnsons knew their work wasn't done. They remained committed to advocating for fairness and justice, understanding that progress required constant vigilance. Their story had started with pain, but ended with transformation, not just for their family, but for an entire community. They had proven that one voice, when amplified by courage and conviction, could spark a wave of change. And that change was just the beginning. In the months that followed the Johnson family's courageous stand, their town became a beacon of progress and transformation. What had started as a painful act of discrimination had blossomed into a movement that redefined the community's values. The changes sparked by the incident were tangible. Local businesses adopted the inclusivity guidelines established by the task force, and diversity training became a standard practice. Shops proudly displayed signs that read, "Everyone welcome here," a small but powerful symbol of the town's commitment to change. The Johnsons often walked through the revitalized Main Street, their children pointing out the newly welcoming atmosphere. "It's different now," Mr. Johnson observed one afternoon. "People are more aware. They're making an effort to be better." One of the most significant signs of growth was Harold Baker's Reform Store. Now renamed the Corner Collective, it had become a vibrant hub where people from all walks of life felt comfortable shopping. Baker himself was a changed man, humble, approachable, and genuinely eager to engage with his customers. "I had to face some hard truths," Baker admitted during a community event. "But I'm grateful for the chance to do better. The Johnsons gave me that chance, even when I didn't deserve it." The Johnson story became a case study for businesses and communities across the country. Universities invited them to speak about their journey, and their experience was even featured in a national documentary on racial justice and social change. Despite the widespread attention, the Johnsons remained grounded. "We're just an ordinary family," Mrs. Johnson said in an interview. "We didn't set out to make waves. We just wanted to be treated fairly. But if our story can help others, then we're grateful for that." The town's journey of transformation had ripple effects beyond its borders. Neighboring communities adopted similar initiatives, and social media campaigns inspired by the Johnsons encouraged individuals to share their own stories of resilience and change. One particularly poignant moment came when a black teenager from a nearby town wrote to the Johnsons. "Because of you," the letter read, "I stood up for myself when I was treated unfairly at school. Thank you for showing me that I don't have to stay silent." The Johnsons framed the letter and hung it in their living room, a reminder that their actions had made a difference. As time passed, the family reflected on the lessons they had learned. "Change isn't easy," Mr. Johnson said thoughtfully, "but it's worth fighting for. And sometimes, all it takes is one voice to get the ball rolling." Their children, now more aware of social issues, grew up with a deep sense of empathy and justice. "We want to be part of the solution," their eldest declared during a school assembly. No one should ever feel like they don't belong. The Johnsons' legacy was not just about their personal victory. It was about inspiring others to stand up for what was right and fostering a community where everyone felt valued and respected. In their closing chapter, the Johnsons continued to advocate for inclusivity and fairness. They knew that the journey was ongoing, but they were hopeful about the future. "Our town isn't perfect," Mrs. Johnson acknowledged, "but we've taken steps in the right direction, and that gives me hope." As they looked around at the thriving, united community, the Johnsons knew one thing for certain: their stand had made a difference, and that difference would continue to ripple through generations. Their story was a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and the belief that change is possible when good people refuse to stay silent.